So we are officially underway now. Sorry about that, gang. Okay, hopefully there's no echo. I'm going to begin by welcoming everybody to the, am I echoing? Oh, the August 2022 El Dorado Hills Area Planning Advisory Committee meeting. I'm John Davey, the chair tonight. Tim White, the vice chair, is here. We seem to be missing, not in attendance tonight. Looking to make sure. John Resler, our other vice chair, and Brook Washburn, another officer. She's the secretary for APAC. So as we begin this meeting tonight, we're both virtual and in person. We have a small audience in both venues, but the meeting is recorded, so everyone can watch it later for all sorts of enjoyment and entertainment. We begin, I'm going to go ahead and share this so we can all see what we're talking about here. Oh, there's the supervisor titles coming in right now. There we go. It's hard to drive and talk at the same time. So again, and welcome everyone for their attendance tonight. I realize into summer, people are busy. We appreciate you showing up. I did call the meeting to order. We'll go ahead and adopt our meeting agenda. I will turn to Tim because you're in attendance. If there's no objection. No objection. All right. And so when we begin our meetings, we provide an opportunity for public comment. And so this is an opportunity for you to comment on anything that is not on our agenda tonight. Our agenda is very light. So if there's something that anybody in the public would like to comment on, we'll start in the room with this big crowd. You can raise your hand if you want to be called on. We have microphones here on the tables. And then if not, I'm looking to the Zoom attendees. You can go ahead and raise your hand in Zoom if you have something you'd like to contribute that's not on our agenda tonight. And I'm not seeing anybody with their hand up, so you guys are making it too easy on us. As we begin our meeting, we're fortunate to have Supervisor Heidel, District 1. He provides supervisor comments and communications about items that are going on at the county. And John is with us tonight remotely, and we thank you for your contribution tonight while you're traveling. So John, if you'd like to jump in, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and thank you, John. I'm going to be very brief because I shared some of this stuff not too long ago at the community council meeting. But the one thing I think it's probably important to El Dorado's residents is the Charter Review Committee has had its first meeting. That got kicked off. I think some of you know that Tim White is the alternate for the Charter Review Committee representing District 1. Dick Ross is our primary, and so they know more about what actually happened at the meeting. I listened into some of it, but it seems like they got off to a good start, and they've elected a chair and a vice chair, and so I think that's moving along. And I think at this point, it's kind of just outreach to figure out, are there things that the public would specifically like the review committee to consider, recognizing that the Board of Supervisors had provided a list of things they would like the committee to consider, but that doesn't necessarily get to the residents' perspective on what's in the charter, what should be looked at. And I'll just remind everybody that we have 4 additional electeds in our charter for El Dorado County that goes beyond the minimum state requirements. And so some of those are the things that I think we should have the charter committee look at. Is that still the best approach for El Dorado County? Should we be looking at reducing some of those elected positions? And so anyway, those are the kinds of discussions I'll be having. There's a number of other things. Should there be term limits looked at for other positions other than the supervisors? Should there be a process that looks at possibly 3 supervisor terms before you have to be out for 4 years to not affect any of the current electeds as supervisors, those kinds of things. So, I mean, there was a pretty good list provided, and I'm not sure if Tim is there tonight. Is he? Yes. Okay, yeah. So he can comment on that more if he chooses to. He doesn't have to, obviously, but that's probably the major step that we've taken forward here in the last 2 weeks. The Board of Supervisors did not meet this last week, and so our next meeting won't be until the 16th, till next week. So more to come at that point in time, but it's been kind of slow process for new board action, but we'll get there. So that's essentially my comments, and if anybody has a question on that, I'd be happy to try to answer the question. But again, Tim was there, so I think he probably has more details if people are interested in what's a charter committee really doing and what's their game plan, those kind of things. So thank you.
Okay. Well, Tim's here in person, but Richard Ross is here virtually. His hand's up. I'm going to.
Okay, good.
Richard, if you'd like to contribute, jump right in.
Yeah, John did a good overview synopsis. Our first meeting was, in a sense, meeting one another, getting organized, getting some briefings from our legal counsel as to what we can and cannot do. The Brown Act is a factor that allows for quality meetings, but sometimes restricts ease of communication. We discussed those matters that John had mentioned that the Board of Supervisors had raised. We began to plot out how we were going to approach the several different items that were raised in terms of organizing a structure in which to gather information. The several items, actually, they go in a lot of different directions. And I think getting our analysts engaged with providing some available information that is available through the county offices was taken. At the end of the meeting, it was discussed, and Mr. White was excellent as not only an alternate, but having him in the audience to be able to observe and also comment about some of the things mentioned, I think added to the quality of that particular first meeting. At the end, it was discussed, but not clarified as to how we were going to get the activities of the Charter Committee out into the public forum so that there was a understanding of what the Charter Committee role is and how the public can become engaged. I think we were all a little concerned, having been on the Charter Committee last time around 4 years ago, that getting the public to be aware of the substance of the issues in the proposals that might come out is really, really important. So not only is it important to discuss these issues, it's also critical that the issues are better understood by the public rather than just the ease of, I don't know anything, so I'm going to vote no. And that's, I think, maybe a equal issue to be reviewed by the Charter Committee, because if improving the charter is what it's all about, then how do you go about doing that successfully? And that's educating the voter about the matters at hand. That's really all I can add, a little bit different than what John did, and Tim may have some views as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Richard. You want to give anything to add, or
I think
you want?
both Johns covered it very well. I think, in sort of dividing up the activity level, there were some, items that the Board of Supervisors asked the Charter Review Committee to look at that it was sort of called low-hanging fruit. There was a civil appointment to the Civil Service Commission, the practice of the supervisors, and the ordinance that governs that, and the Charter Review don't sync up. So we've got the analysts and the council from that are working with the Charter, they're going to research that, and that's something that we think is probably easy to be done, and we can maybe even address that at our next scheduled meeting, which we should have out in the next week or so. Otherwise, some of these activities or projects, like looking at term limits for all county elected offices, or increasing the supervisor term limits from 2 to 3, those are going to take more time and effort. What are other counties throughout California doing? What do we consider to be best practices? Things like that. So I'm looking forward to working with Richard and the other members of the committee and reporting back to the supervisors, and hopefully they will agree with our recommendations, and we might see some things on the ballot next year to improve and update our charter.
Well, thank you both for participating in that. It's volunteer service, so we know what that's about here. Those meetings are recorded too. I saw it was posted in Legistar today. So there's a way to, probably share that a little bit if we need to, and push out to social media through APAC. Really isn't development, but it's appropriate. Not a problem. We share some other things that go on in the county as well. So, are there any questions in the room about what Supervisor had all discussed in terms of the charter review committee? And if there's not in the room, I was going to ask if there's any of the attendees on Zoom, if you'd throw your hand up. Well, apparently you guys have covered it all because nobody has their hand up.
Good.
So, well, thank you both, and thank you Supervisor Heidel. And I know that you're traveling. Don't feel obligated to sit around. If you want to take a nap, that's fine too.
I'm going to turn the video off and just listen. I think that's a more appropriate thing at this point. So thank you.
It's like my friend, the former radio guy. It's the audio is compelling and interesting, evocative. So don't get too excited there while you're listening in. Thank you, John. So the next item on our agenda tonight, I'm going to share this screen because primarily it's a lot of me jibber jabbering tonight. And I make sure I get back to where I'm at. Okay. Sorry, gang. It's hard to drive and talk. This one, and there we go. Okay. We don't have a guest speaker tonight, but we do have a couple items that there are notifications or updates where we're not taking action or considering something or providing a review function for any projects, but it is to keep the community up to date so that people understand what's going on. And one thing we had talked about, we did I want to say it was like November, December, maybe January, I can't remember. We had a meeting where we focused solely on what APAC does and how we review projects. And, again, that is, I went to sleep and I was the one talking. So I don't consider that something super exciting. We had a ton of people, a couple hundred people look at that video after we posted it. So it's nice to know something that people are watching it and that it did draw some attention. It's very dry. So get ready for more. We're going to move ahead here. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is El Dorado County Advisory Committees. And so APAC is not the only advisory committee in terms of local communities. And specifically, we look at development, but we'll jump into what some of the other communities are doing. In El Dorado County, there are several. There's the Myers Advisory Council, the Diamond Springs and El Dorado Community Advisory Committee, the Coloma Lotus Advisory Committee, Cameron Park Design Review Committee, Cool and Pilot Hill Advisory Committee, and of course here in El Dorado Hills, it's APAC. So as we look at this, so most of these committees are committees of the Board of Supervisors. They're established through policy or county ordinances. And they're established to provide advice to the entire board, not a specific supervisor. The majority of these, the members are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Members are recommended, I believe, and then the board votes to approve. So out of these committees we're talking about tonight, the Myers Advisory Council, the Coloma Lotus Advisory Committee, the Diamond Springs and El Dorado Community Advisory Committee, and the Cameron Park Design Review Committee are all committees of the Board of Supervisors, and they report and provide advisory comments and guidance to the board, the Planning Commission, and the Planning Department and their functions. Some of them are a little unique. We'll talk about some of those. And then you have locally formed advisory groups, which are formed and sort of managed by area residents. And the residents submit findings and concerns to the county government. In our case, we provide findings to the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission. We talk to the Transportation Commission. We talk to the Transportation Department and the Planning Department, and we talk to applicants for development project. The Cool Pilot Hill Advisory Committee is another locally formed group. They're not a committee of the Board of Supervisors. APAC's a little different. We'll talk about APAC when we get to it a little later. So the Myers Advisory Council, it's a function of the, I'm trying to move this so I can read my screen. It's a function of the Myers Area Plan, which is a recent update of a previous Myers plan. The Myers Area Plans, it's a long-term plan for the community in Myers, and Myers, of course, is right next to Lake Tahoe. They have a Myers vision. It recognizes their unique characteristics of their sort of rural and tourist sort of focused community. Their advisory council worked with the El Dorado County, the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, which is a multi-state and multi-county agency that that guides development and planning in the Lake Tahoe region. And then the public also participated in updating the community plan. And we're going to look real quick. Here's a basic map. When you drive in on Highway 50 and you come down the hill, you have that wonderful view of Lake Tahoe as you come over the summit. That last little dogleg to the right as you approach the basin, that's Myers. And Myers runs about to Pioneer Trail, the road that sort of runs a parallel road to Highway 50 that heads to the north and east around the lake. During the 1960s, the area in Myers was part of a residential subdivision plan. It was by two different groups, two business corporations. It was going to be Tahoe Paradise Homes and Tahoe Paradise Properties. Those were the two businesses. The neighborhoods were going to be called Tahoe Paradise, but now the area is just commonly referred to as Myers or Tahoe Paradise. The commercial area is Myers, and commercial area is what you drive through when you're coming in on Highway 50. So their plan builds upon the 1993 Myers Community Plan. We'll come back to community plans again as we're making our discussion tonight. So it included the original vision and plans of the 1993 Community Plan, which was sort of the guiding, almost, I don't want to say like a general plan, but it's an area plan, much like APAC worked on back in 1981 for Eldorado Hills. It includes all the land in the community area that was in the community plan before when they made this new area plan. It's 600 acres, 669 acres, mixed use recreation and conservation lands, because that's big in the Tahoe area, and right of way land. It's residential. It covers the gamut of what the people who live in that community, the businesses, what everything needs. The plan includes policy direction, zoning, which is something we don't have here. Everything's done at the county level. Regulations that apply within the plan area, guidance on how it should be integrated with surrounding areas. It incorporates both the Tahoe Regional Plan and the general plan of Eldorado County, incorporates both those elements, and how they implement things via ordinances for both those documents. So the idea is they simplify the compliance with local and regional requirements so that when somebody develops something or wants to do a project, whether it's a business or residential, they know what they're starting with and they know what they have to comply with. So Myers is a little different. They're off by themselves. They're not in the incorporated city of South Lake Tahoe. So the residents there really wanted to have some say in how their community worked. So they have 8 appointed members, and there are 2 vacancies right now. And then again, here's, oops, a little too far. Sorry, I went too far. Go back there, come on. So they have 8 appointed members. There's a county ordinance that was drafted, I want to say it was 2019, that finalized the area plan for Myers. And so their advisory council provides feedback. They function similarly to the Planning Commission in that they're providing that advisory feedback to multiple agencies, whether it's TARP up there for Tahoe, the county, our Planning Commission for the county, and for different elements in the area for all sorts of activities concerning development or how their community grows. So, and I'll talk a little bit about it. I know that a few years ago, Supervisor Heidel was talking. I want to say it was after his first election when he was on the board. We had been talking about community plans and how we could implement them in other areas. Eldorado Hills, could we develop a community plan where we would define sort of the minimum standards for development? And it's a big effort, and it's a sort of a big lift to do this. The Myers area plan, it took several years for them to get through the entire process to get it approved, to update that original plan, but now they have what they wanted. They're having some genuine input and some say on land use and other development things. So it's an interesting area. It's an interesting way that they're the only community in El Dorado County that has an area plan anymore. So that was Myers, and then I was going to talk about Diamond Springs and El Dorado, the town of El Dorado. And so they're on the map. You can see generally where that's at. It's Highway 50. It's sort of to the west of Missouri Flat. It's south of the highway, and then along Highway 49 and Pleasant Valley Road. So that's two communities. And so the resolution, the ordinance that created the Myers area plan, essentially that they wanted some say in what they're and what happened in their community. The Board of Supervisors agreed with that. It was implemented in 2015. So they review and make recommendations to planning staff, to the zoning administrator in the planning department, planning commission, and the Board of Supervisors for these following areas: discretionary project applications, which we know a lot about, implementation of the 2004 general plan use designations. Again, we dabble in that. Zoning ordinance update, which we don't particularly weigh in on. That's something the planning department sort of provides that input to the planning commission, and they provide the advisory capacity for the Board of Supervisors there. And then other issues that's directed by the Board of Supervisors. They have 7 members there because of their advisory committee, because it's 2 communities, so you want to have a good representation between them all. They're very uniquely qualified in terms of how they get appointed. They have to live on a business-owned property within the community region or 1 mile outside the community region boundary line, so it's defined. They serve with no compensation. Again, we know what that's like. And they serve at the pleasure of the board. They have a 4-year term when they're appointed, and they are required to meet twice a year or more often if they have projects or the committee members or the Board of Supervisors ask them to take a look at something specifically. And that's their current member roster right now. So, and that's in Diamond Springs. And I think an example of what they're looking at right now, they just provided feedback on the Dorado Oaks project.
Yes.
So that was a very well-attended meeting. And, that's a big project for them. That's maybe not a big project here in El Dorado Hills, but that is a transformational project for that community, and they've been providing a lot of feedback. So next on our list is the Coloma Lotus Advisory Committee, which used to be the River Management Advisory Committee. And you can see here, Lotus and Coloma, if you've driven on Lotus Road heading up from Green Valley and heading north, Lotus has the Hensington Park, and as soon as you get to the end of the road there at Highway 49, you hang a right and you're in Coloma. So there's another 2 community advisory committee, but they're very aligned together. And again, since they were part of the River Management Advisory Committee in the past, this ordinance was drafted in 2019 after Supervisor Parlin was elected and getting feedback from her community there in District 4. So again, there's a lot of whereases and how ordinances are drafted, but they're concerned about their existing community identity. It's rural. They have some not urban but suburban components to their community. The original River Management Advisory Committee was focused on sort of the outfitters and the rafting activities there along the river, and the American River does run right through both their communities. So with this new ordinance, the River Management Advisory Committee was eliminated, and it was replaced by this new entity. And again, it's local residents that volunteer. Review and make recommendations to the Park and Recreation Commission, which is different from a lot of our advisory committees because recreation is a key aspect in Coloma and in Lotus. So they advise the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission helps to decide on licensing for the rafting outfitters and other entities. They also advise the board considering issues with their community, areas of influence along South Fourth American River from Chili Bar Dam to Folsom Lake. They review and make recommendations to the Park and Recreation, again, but they do updates and amendments to the River Management Plan, which is part of our general plan. They have accountability of the River Trust Fund, which is a small fund that they oversee to a degree, or have input to. Ordinances and regulations related to private or commercial activities on the South Fork of the river. And then again, like us, discretionary project applications. So they look at development projects or business projects when they come in. And then same as the other committees, have the implementation of the general plan, and then other matters that the Parks and Rec Commission might refer them to, or that their own their own organization wants to take up, or matters of concern by the community. They've identified that in this ordinance. So, but qualifier is nothing in the resolution shall require the comments or recommendation from the committee be a prerequisite for a decision by the planning commission or by the board of supervisors. So we know a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, and that was 4 years ago. There was a lot of infighting in the river management.
And there still is.
Yeah, there still is. I mean, they were both sides, environmentalists going against outfitters. Other community input, but
Yeah.
there's, anything you do with the river and environmentalists, and, increasing number of outfitting trips, it always has ramifications. So they are a very, very active group, and they have a lot of debate before
Yes, they do.
things are recommended up to the planning commission or the board of supervisors.
Yeah, as an example, if we talk about the river, and that is like a big aspect of that community, and it's a wonderful thing they have there that we all take advantage of and enjoy, and people from far and wide come and enjoy it. But they also have a lot of other tourism. They have a lot of bed and breakfast. A couple years ago, there was a lot of conflict about a particular bed and breakfast that was doing wedding events, and that they were demonstrated to be not complying with the conditional use permit with terms of sound and how loud and where they place speakers. And so, yeah, this group sort of took over all aspects of, like, when we look at development, but they have that recreation, they have the park focus, and the river. It's a little different and it's unique. I know when they made the switch and they formed the new advisory committee, Supervisor Parlin emailed me and asked if I could talk to their chair when they first started. How are you doing your meetings? And so I invited them to come, and it's a bit of a drive for them. But we did discuss, here's how we do it. It's important to have, community input, try to keep it as civil as you can. People get upset, but be respectful and listen. And there's obviously things that they can't do that we can't do. We're just taking it in and providing that advisory component to upstream. So, but they're very excited to get going. And it was tough for them with the pandemic and how they were meeting. We were able to facilitate it strictly through Zoom. And they meet there locally, I think at the Grange. I'm trying to remember. I wasn't able to go to the one I was invited to. So, but that's in the community, and that they're very active in looking at how how they can address the concerns about the multiple aspects of that community, river record. So they have very defined membership requirements, business represent. They have a couple business representatives. One shall be an owner operator of a business in the area. One shall be a permitted outfitter. One shall not be a permitted outfitter. Non-commercial boater representative. It's very well defined what the requirements are to participate on that. They have landowner or resident as well, and then a member at large, or multiple members at large. They just have to live within the area. They don't have to reside on any property within 1,000 feet of the river. So they're not that river aspect of their community. They probably have a focus on the rest of the community. So they too are appointed for 4-year terms, and they serve at the pleasure of the board. So moving along, the Cameron Park Design Review Committee, a little different in that they look at development projects, but they also look at things that here locally that maybe an HOA would look at for their architectural standards, an architectural review committee, whereas the CSD does here for other areas of El Dorado Hills that aren't controlled by an HOA, and they do their design review function. So the process, their official description on the county websites, they review the process to provide protection, enhancement, and use of places, sites, buildings, and structures having special character, aesthetic interest, and value. They look to enhance tourism, the economy of the county by protecting and preserving those places that have those unique character and interest. So, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, you have the people on mic near you. There you go. There you go, you're green. Yeah, and well, that's what we're trying to, so Marple Valley isn't in front of us yet, but I've heard maybe, there are things, there's an EIR that was started in 2012, I think. So, but I actually, I live in the Bass Lake area. The hill behind my house is Cameron Park. So there's a lot of intersecting things. I know a lot of the people that have served on that design review committee. In fact, so Vince, I know, I've seen him several times. I've gone to several of their meetings just out of courtesy and to, they're volunteering, and I want to, we as a group try to support other volunteers in the advisory committee stuff. So, but they keep in close contact. There's nothing really that has overlap. As best we can when this comes forward, we need to determine, there are elements of the Marble Valley specific plan that are El Dorado Hills that will be annexed into the El Dorado Hills CSD that are served by the El Dorado Hills Fire Board, the fire department. But there are parts of that may not be, and there are also parts that are part of Cameron Park. And so as that comes up, I left a message for Vince. I have not heard back from him, but hopefully as we move forward, they really look at the design, and they do provide some feedback on some of the traffic elements and stuff, but like they look at things like the Kentucky Fried Chicken in Cameron Park. They're remodeling the store. They reviewed that. So they're looking at literally design review, and they all have some unique qualifications. They have design experience as professionals, as that's their job. They have businesses they run that are design, construction. So they have a little bit different eye and a different perspective, but they do try to be fair and look at all aspects of it, even though they have sort of a narrow prism that they're working through.
Other question is how does the Board of Supervisors look at them versus looking at us?
Well, they're an appointed committee of the board. So,
Right, that's my point.
so I guess we would ask a supervisor. We won't put John on the spot tonight, but I was hoping we could get the planning department to come in and provide that feedback. How the other committees that are appointed by the board, what sort of, what's my word I'm looking for here? How are they received in terms of their recommendations of their findings versus volunteers? And they are volunteers. They're just not doing it for money, but yeah, they're appointed. So, but I also, and I won't say it's this board, I talked to that group over the last several years. They experience the same things we do, that they will make a recommendation to the planning commission or the planning department, and they say, great, thanks, and then it gets ignored. They've experienced that. I think it's been a little more receptive in the last probably 4 or 5 years, but they have been, I've heard from them that, they worked on they wanted to do a sign standard in Cameron Park for commercial signs. They worked on that for years, and they had not really any buy-in from the planning department. They were told that, yeah, okay, we're gonna look at it, we'll consider it, and you'll probably get something implemented. It's still, they literally worked, I want to say it's close to 10 years, if I'm remembering correctly. So, and then when we had the effort recently, right before the pandemic, about community design standards, so it's primarily commercial and multifamily, their group, they were very eager to participate as members of that design review committee and separate themselves from that and be part of the design standards for, as Cameron Park developed. Well, now that effort sort of fell apart with the pandemic, and I know that we're talking about community standards, design standards for commercial and multifamily again, in a lot of the more rural areas. Eventually we'll get to El Dorado Hills as well. We had members, Joel Wiley is with us tonight, and Brook, Brook Washburn, they were both involved in that as it was getting going. So hopefully something comes back with that, and there's more connectivity between the different areas. I know that each area has special focus and special needs. We'll see, but we want to be respectful, because if it's impact Cameron Park, we want them to provide that impact. If they ask us what we think, well, we'll tell them what we think, and the same thing too. We might entertain what they might suggest and incorporate those findings, but it might not be something that we had thought of, maybe not thoughtfully considered to the degree maybe they see it. So I'm hoping that we have a lot of engagement with them as those two projects go forward. They're big projects. Where is it right now? We don't know. So, is anybody
So
raising
John,
their hand? Okay,
Yeah,
go ahead.
John, I do have something to add to this. My perspective is the Cameron Park Design Review Committee was created because they didn't have a lot of HOAs in the community.
Yes.
And when they saw what was going on in Serrano and those kinds of things, they felt like they needed to have a design review element that they didn't have through commonly HOAs. The other big difference is their Cameron Park Community Services District doesn't have a design review committee that normally would deal with architectural review, et cetera, for those communities that do not have an HOA. So they were pretty much devoid of all of that. And particularly when you look at the number of apartments and everything else, there was a group of people that wanted to make sure that the design standards, I'll call it, for Cameron Park were maintained at some level. And that's why they ended up with this fairly narrow focus called the Design Review Committee. But to my knowledge, they've never really engaged in land use discussions. And maybe they have, and I'm not aware of it, but they seem to be really focused on the design review aspect of land use, but not necessarily other aspects of land use, like development agreements or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
that's my perspective I've gained over time. And if somebody knows differently, I'd be happy to be corrected. But I think that's why this group got started. They recognized Cameron Park was developing as a different kind of community without any real standards. When the area plans went away, they were kind of left without a whole lot that defines what Cameron Park's going to become.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Another element of that too is that there has not been a lot of land use development in Cameron Park, other than small apartment things since the early 2000s. There's been, I think, two or three, I think, residential developments, the one off a meter, but I think that is Cameron Park. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot that's happened in Cameron Park in terms of development other than commercial. Some small apartments, you know, a 4 or 5 unit apartment building, and they do weigh in on that. You know,
But I don't know that they've ever weighed in, for instance, on Marble Valley. I've never heard any feedback from them relative to the Marble Valley proposal, and we know that's been in work for almost a decade. So
yeah, well,
I don't know.
we haven't weighed in on it, and well, since 2016 or so. So because there's simply nothing before us. In fact, all the documents on the county website have kind of disappeared. So, but I know that they're eager to do that. They were eager to look at that effort for the community design standards, and then how, you know, land use could be folded into that. Whether they were ready to do it at that time, it's hard. But there are very specific requirements to be appointed to that committee.
Yeah.
And I think that when they do their when they provide their feedback, they usually provide it straight to the planning department, and then the planning department distributes it upstream, as it were. And I think that might change if there's really any significant development. This project might be the one that does it for them.
Yeah, could be. So we'll see.
There are a lot of people in Cameron Park that they've formed some volunteer groups that are they're not satisfied with the way things were planned or developed. And this is separate from the design review committee. You know, Cameron Park, a lot of people feel that, you know, they get stuck with all the apartment buildings, and there's some truth in that. So those residents are becoming a little more active. You know, they were very active in getting the sheriff's,
Right.
I want to call it a substation. And I think that community really welcomed that over there. And again, it was but it's in a commercial area. It's really not a residential like we usually see. So.
I think bottom line is, once the communities have a draft environmental impact report or something to review for Marble Valley, I think that's always sort of the impetus to get people started and organized, because you have deadlines that start rolling into place. You have to respond quickly. So I suspect when that comes up, we'll be reaching out to them and say, look, maybe we have a couple of joint meetings, you know, one there, one here.
I would, even if it's not a joint meeting, I'm not opposed to just attending to support their efforts and what they do as part of the review. Yeah. And I've extended an invitation to them that when they're available, you know, they can come talk to us or look at how they might find a way that we're reviewing something that's completely wrong in terms of the design element. And I would welcome that input like I would from any member of the community. So, but yeah, that group, the core of that group is very consistent and thoughtful in the way they approach what they review. I was impressed by the amount of knowledge that individual members had and how they applied it, and that they're very committed to their community. So it was, it was an enjoyable thing to support and to go and watch. For their, let's see, there's no hands up, right? For their membership, owners of property in the area, 2 are business owners or maybe business owners of property within the area, not residents. 4-year term, they suggest members be appointed on a staggered basis to sort of overlap, so you have some continuity as members gain experience in that environment and how they review. If somebody leaves, they want to have some retained institutional knowledge and how they approach it. They typically meet the 4th Monday of the month at 6:30 p.m. I know that they were looking at they reviewed the proposed apartment complex on, drawing a blank, right from Rasmussen Park, where my friends live. But they looked at that apartment complex. They looked at the drive-through coffee place. It was, can't remember the name of them. Drawing a blank on that too. It's right there at Meter or not at Meter, at Cameron Park. It's Miraloma, sorry. So they looked at that. They looked at the proposal. There's a mixed-use apartment and retail commercial use that's up the road there in Cameron Park. It's on Cameron Park Drive. It's south of Sudbury, but it's it's closer to the highway. And so it's zone commercial, and they're looking at that. I know they're very happy to take a look at it. And then they look at things like they're building a triplex on one road on Cambridge Road, right by Cameron Park Lake, and they looked and reviewed all the design standards for a triplex. So they do look at a lot of different elements that's going on. So, and the one thing I was going to jump in, and again, they are a committee of the Board of Supervisors. So, but typically they meet in Cameron Park at the fire station on Country Club. I'm like on the number. I'll look at Tim. I'm not putting you on the spot, but that's where they meet. They have it. All these committees that meet that are committees of the board recently have started meeting in county offices, and I know that's on the supervisor's agenda for next week. This is one of the facilities that are going to be considered for committees of the county or agencies or agents of the county to provide public meetings. So, but the fire station's not on the list. But they've been meeting in person in Placerville, which, and they've been streaming their meetings via Zoom as well. But when they're there in Placerville, they have the county's Zoom capabilities. It's a lot higher end, more professional. And they were very impressed by what the county provided to them. But an aspect of their meeting is like, well, geez, we're 16 miles away in Placerville. Nobody from Cameron Park is coming up here. So I know they appreciated the ability to have better equipment and support. The clerk of the board was actually supporting them in their effort in streaming that meeting. But they're really trying to get back into the community. So, and that's just the design review committee section of I'm drawing a blank on that too, on it's county ordinances essentially. So that's pulled from it. If you want to read it, go right ahead. But it's again, it's compelling. So this is their current board. They do have one vacant spot, and they are engaged. They're very engaged, and I think they're good advocates for the community. So the next one we're going to look at is the Tool Pilot Hill Advisory Committee. The Tool they formed in 1978, so they are predecessors to APAC. Now they weren't formed to do a community plan or an area plan that I remember or that I can see that's documented. But it was community-minded citizens in the area to act as an advisory capacity to provide feedback to the Board of Supervisors. And if you're unaware, Tool and Pilot Hill are north of us along Salmon Falls. Pilot Hill is a little closer to us. Tool is up at Highway 49 and Highway 193 where they come together. It's at the top of the canyon as you come to El Dorado County from Auburn. So jump through. Now, they reactivated their committee, I want to say it's about 3 years ago. And the same thing, I saw that they were doing it, and I saw that their committee chair at the time was excited. It was in the Mountain Democrat, and I had heard from Supervisor Parlin that, hey, they're getting going. I did reach out and I talked to them a little bit, and, they are they're very community focused. There have been a couple of designs or research efforts, I want to say, I think it was the University of Oregon. They had some assistance in looking at how do we do our streets, our roads, because it's not a walkable community. They do have a commercial area in the center. But the traffic, the commute traffic coming through, people going to jobs in Placer County through Roseville, going through the canyon, or coming down Salmon Falls and Dorado Hills to get to Highway 50, all those different aspects. They were looking at how they could better manage it or plan it for the future. And they talked about things like roundabouts. They talked about cutouts and curbing to slow people down. And they're very concerned about their commercial district right there. In fact, they talk about on their website, their rural communities, their Main Street, which is the commercial focus, and their parks and recreation. They believe that just the sort of natural growth they've had in the community, they're at a point. Oops, hello?
Good. You're done?
Yeah, finally.
Oh, hey, Brooke.
Oh, hi.
Is
Hold
it
on.
okay?
Hold on. Hi, sorry guys.
No problem. Just want to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Yeah, no, I didn't realize I was not on mute. Hold on.
Oh, no. And now you're fixed. They're good.
I think the impetus for getting Cool Pilot together again was the Dollar General store.
Yes.
Dollar General decided they were going to 2 new stores in more rural areas of Dorado County. Cool was one, I think Somerset was
Yeah, it's
other.
South County.
Yeah, and they had, by right, by zoning and everything else, they had the right to do that. But in Cool, let's just focus on Cool. In Cool, they felt that would really destroy their, it could put out the smaller businesses and their very small Main Street out of business. It didn't feel like a Dollar General store was the right retail store in that smaller community. So they got together and they went all the way up to the Board of Supervisors.
Yes, it is.
And appealed, and it was approved by the board.
There were elements like, they looked at things like where they needed to add, I think they wanted to add a bike lane and to make it a little safer around the actual storefront for Dollar General. And I know right now, in the county, I know Supervisor Parlin probably posted it too, but, I think a condition of approval was not to have their large trucks drive up 49 from the confluence and come up Cool, because you can't, it's restricted to kind of vehicle traffic. The Kingpin to Axle link, you can't have a 53-foot trailer drive up the canyon. And apparently, Dollar General deliveries have been doing that, and they've been getting stuck, and the Highway Patrol has to go up and unstick them or block the road. So I believe that they talked to their distribution center in Sacramento and said, to reinforce, this was a condition of approval of your project, if you cannot make your deliveries on this road. It's not allowed anyways by vehicle code, but, when you need to make delivery, that's what they're doing. So, again, they're engaged in the community. They're motivated by what happened. They felt they didn't have a lot of control over it. And so, again, they're just volunteers trying to provide a benefit to their community and to communicate that upstream to the county. So, and again, when all these, and here's their existing board members, they have some that are looking at strictly like the land use and economic development. They have a park and recreation member who focuses on that, and then they just have their other officers. So, but they're very engaged, and we want to support anybody who's doing these things. We struggle to do. And again, they do things like do community surveys. One of the items they looked at was, in a list of items on a survey, their overriding concern was no development on the scenic corridor of 193 and Highway 49. 97% of their respondents voted on that. And then I think that, maintain the rural character of their community, 90%. 87% said yes, they want to attract new businesses and services. They just want it to fit into what they believe their community is. And then they're looking also, they want to increase affordable workforce housing in the community. And then they did a survey because they have, I believe they have a gas station, if I'm remembering. I'm trying to drive through there, yeah.
Yes,
I'm trying to.
yes.
So, and that was a survey they did just in June. And yeah, the respondents said that, there's a specific place that they thought a gas station should go, and there are 2 specific places that it should not go. So they are engaging their community and trying to represent that upstream, as it were. So the last one on our list tonight is APAC. And so APAC was in fact formed in 1981, and it was at the request of the County Board of Supervisors. Back in 1981, there were not general plans for municipalities and counties, so area plans was how we approached planning our development. So those original volunteers, and Supervisor Heidel was one of the original volunteers. They worked for 18 months, created a land use designation and zoning maps for El Dorado Hills and Salmon Falls because of the combined area. And they made those recommendations. I know that there was some debate back and forth, but it was modified by the Planning Commission, the Board of Supervisors. They adopted it as the area plan for El Dorado Hills and Salmon Falls. So back then they were divided into area plans for specific communities. But now that's different because we have to have a general plan at the municipal level. So we are not an incorporated community. The county is our guiding governance, and their general plan is what we live by here in El Dorado Hills. Placerville and South Lake Tahoe, they have to do their own general plans. So, but since 1990, after the general plan sort of became the standard, APAC converted from that original focus of the request of the Board of Supervisors, and we're sort of an independent activity, but we are a standing committee of the El Dorado Hills Community Council. And the El Dorado Hills Community Council typically is the first Monday of the month. Most of our attendees are there as well. So, and we've been going since, so happy birthday to us. We're, how many years? 41 years? Hard to believe. So that's a map of the area plan way back from 1981. It's a little different now than it was then. So there were other area APACs back at that time. APAC was like the only surviving and continuously operating APAC, like the Pilot Hill and Pool Advisory Committee. They were formed in 1978, but they took a break for a long time, and they reformed it to address those concerns there. So we're only advisory to the county. We make recommendations and findings, but we try to have an influence with applicants for planning projects, for developers, with county staff, with planning commissioners, Board of Supervisors, and we've had several projects. The outcomes have been changed based on some of the written positions and reports of how we support a project or what we think would be conditional support and how a project can be made better. So as local residents just volunteering, we have a very strong voice in that process. Again, no authority, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So I did want to come back to this real quick because over the last, I'd say since last year, November, October, we've had a lot of community residents who don't know where to take their challenges with local governments, whether it's special district or county. So, we've had a lot of questions. Some people are concerned about the expense that the fire department went through for the training center that's under construction right now. That has been planned forever. I mean, there's been a lot of work. It was big, it's smaller. I think it's right sized now in terms of budget and what, that's my personal opinion. But we have people asking us, could you look into that? Well, that is not what we do. We have no authority, as a group of individuals who want to do that and provide that feedback, we could. I'm not inclined to do that. This is enough for me. We've had questions about the CSD, about how they develop parks, and I think parks are part of the development project. I don't want to say that's something we don't want to look at, but I would like to have some feedback from the county, and I want to open up for the CSD to tell us how they approach their park development. I think as long as community's informed, you don't have to agree with it, but maybe you can make the process better in terms of what they do. They're a special district. They have their own elected board. You can influence that board by voting for who you think is an appropriate person or voting against who you think is not an appropriate person. So while we do a lot of things and we look at a lot of development projects, really looking at special, EID is another one people ask about a lot. That is so far outside of our charter, unless it's something that impacts development. We have a very narrow window of bandwidth with what we can do right now. So we definitely want to do that. I would just say the grand jury is the place probably for that to happen. So, or voting for different people on those boards. So that's my soapbox. If anybody wants to ask a question, I'll open it up, but we're not going to get too far into that. Let's see, I don't see hands. Okay. So, so if it impacts development or how our community is planned, we want to have some thoughtful conversation about it, but we're not here to oversee special districts. That's where we're at, so. So that was it. If anybody has any more questions about those committees, I wouldn't mind having them come and just talk to us. That'd be fine too. But we try to support them because they're doing the same things that we're doing, whether appointed by a board or whether volunteers. We're trying to make the communities better, and really, that's really all we're trying to do is just get people to provide input, and so that we're not developing our community in a vacuum. That we really are giving feedback to the process. So, no questions on that. I'm seeing here. The next thing on the agenda tonight we have some comments going in for a specific TAC meeting that's happening on the 15th, if I'm remembering correctly. Well, we're going to find out since I have it on here. So the TAC meeting is a technical advisory committee meeting for the planning process. And essentially what it is, it's the planning department and then affected agencies, whether they're county agencies, the fire department here, utilities, CSD, sheriff's department, agencies, provide feedback at the initial beginning of a project for an applicant. So they know that, hey, you know what, we have a problem with your driveway. This is the ordinance, the way you've designed it. We know right now this isn't going to be, we're going to have a problem. Let's figure it out now, and then you can go work on it. And historically, community is not involved in TAC meetings. It's strictly agencies. We've always had the courtesy of getting notification that a TAC meeting was happening. We get the emails, so we could submit comments, but we're not physically in person there at the meetings because they were always in person in the county. When the pandemic hit, they started doing virtual meetings and in a hybrid like we're doing now. And we would get the notification and we get the link to participate. I know that our Vice Chair, John Rensselaer, he's been on some of those calls and made his opinion known. Yeah, he's not shy about that. I've been in a couple of them. I'm always impressed by the agencies, the fire department, the feedback they provide. CSD provides good feedback, EID. So, but we're normally as community not exposed to how this works. So this came up last month and it's a project, it's the EDH Sofia Parkway, it's a neighborhood retail center is what they're calling it. And it's on the corner of Sofia Parkway of the southwest corner, Sofia Parkway at Green Valley Road, across the street from the AMPM that's there now, and the Purple Place is on the north side of the street. And so these applicants actually have an approved project on the parcel next to it, which we reviewed, it'd be 4 years ago, approved, I think 3 years ago. Yeah. Just before 2020. So it's EDH Folsom Self-Storage. And we provided a lot of feedback to that, and they were very engaged. They were here like 3 times at least. And they listened to what we said. Now, they didn't change their project totally to comply with what we thought was maybe not the best use or the best way to develop the project, but they did listen and they did engage with us, and we really appreciated the amount of time that they took to participate with us. So what's proposed for this one, the TAC meeting is on the 15th. It's a drive-through car wash, which at one point, I believe it's a quick car wash with a conditional use permit that's separate from this project. But now they're just calling it a drive-through car wash. So I'm assuming that the conditional use permit is still in track it. So I'm assuming it's still the correct class. They have an auto detail shop. Originally, it was supposed to be a smog check. I believe the smog thing across the street was going to cut across. So, but now it's an auto detail shop. They have a drive-through quick serve restaurant with a retail suite, meaning that part of the building would be, just retail. And then they have a standalone drive-through quick serve restaurant. So this, I imagine we're going to hear a lot about this because when the PM was proposed, that too was proposed for some, I want to say for some quick serve restaurants at one point, and it was, quite controversial. And they moved on to the AMPM, which also has car wash. So this is a basic look at what the original design of the project that they submitted, I want to say back in March. This map is sideways to me. Green Valley Road is running the wrong way. So if you turn it, you'll see it a little better. I think I turned on some of it. And this is the updated site plan right now. And again, I have a mouse on here I can point with. Sorry. Okay. So this is a standalone up here at the west side of the project. This is a standalone quick serve with a drive-through. parking in the middle. To the south side of the project will be the drive-through car wash. On the southeastern edge is the proposed detail shop. And then up here on the corner next to the driveway entrance off Sofia is it's a drive-through quick serve with a small retail element. So it'll probably be a couple hundred feet, like a AT&T store or something small. But we don't know. But in looking at this, there's the drive-through lane has 2 lanes as you enter to take 2 orders at a time. So as you look, it's a very compact spot. It's pretty dense for the plan, and I think that that'll be something we'll be addressing. But no formal plan that I've had email messages with them, and I told them, hey, we appreciate what you provided before in terms of outreach. We want you to be engaged. When it's appropriate for you to come and talk, we want you to come and talk, and they've said they will. So this TAC meeting, though, is not for us. There, I turned it sideways so you can look. That's more true. North Green Valley at the top, right? That's north. And there's a creek that runs, or a wetland that runs behind it, and there's another project later that's proposed. It's just a pre-op right now.
So just so people know, where is the self-storage?
The self-storage is, okay, this is going to be bad in the video because the video recording is reversed.
Okay,
The self-storage is to the west
okay, yeah,
along Shadowfax Lane.
yes.
And then this project's along Sofia Parkway, which is to the east, but it's on the same south side of Green Valley Road. As part of the self-storage project, they are building an auxiliary lane along the frontage of the project. It will be a dedicated right turn lane onto Sofia Parkway southbound.
Yeah.
So,
And so in this image, it'd be on the left-hand side.
as we're looking at it now, but when we look back at the recording.
Right, yeah, I'm saying as we look at it now, it'd be on the left-hand side. If you're coming into El Dorado Hills, you go past the self-storage before you get to this corner.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, and they have reciprocal parking, before they bought, they're partners in this development now, but they had a reciprocal parking lot, access agreement as they're developing this, because they're very limited on where they can come in or out for the self-storage. So, move along. So as they looked at this, and this is, traffic's always my thing. So no question, there's going to be some impact here. But when we look at traffic, we also have to think about traffic inside the project. So they're looking right now, it's just, what's required by ordinance from the county and for these specific uses is 36 spaces. What they're, and 1 RV space. What they're planning is 60 parking spaces and 2 RV parking spaces. So they broke it out how they would probably allocate those uses. Parking lot's parking lot, you use whatever spot you can get, right? So they're talking about providing more than the county would require by ordinance, which, they probably view that as, beneficial for the county and, to make it better.
I think my feeling is that, RV, it's right next to Folsom Lake.
Yes.
I think this is going to be a stopping point for people in RVs.
Or boats.
And people with boats.
Yeah.
And if they're going to go there to load up on food or whatever, if you're towing a boat, and I see very tight turns here, very narrow lanes. I mean, I know they will have to comply with the minimum requirements that the fire department requires so that we can get fire department apparatus in there.
Correct.
Quickly and safely. But I think that's one of the issues. It's been identified already, and once we get more details, we'll have to look at it and see if it makes sense. I mean, I'm also concerned, quite frankly, I think the neighbors there, they objected to, when the AMP before that was built, the 2 drive-through restaurants. What are the hours going to be? I mean, we had the same issue up at Saratoga Retail.
Yeah,
And they said, okay, well, we got rid of the drive-through restaurant, we put in a Starbucks, but that is so popular that the cars going into there are taking up
and that's again,
space, and it's all jammed up. They go out onto Saratoga Road, and it becomes dangerous.
in that project specifically, and we worked on that for a long time, Brook worked on it for a long time.
Yeah.
We said, hey, you know what? Your drive-through traffic is going to be backed up into the parking aisles, which is, I think by ordinance, you're not supposed to do. It's not supposed to be planned that way. And they had 2 drive-throughs, so they eliminated the Habit Burger, and they went, we're going to go with the Chick-fil-A. We said, it's still sort of the way that that's a very compressed and very tight parking lot. We thought there would still be an impact. We voted, we couldn't support it, not even conditionally. And so, they worked, after it was approved, they worked with the residents, because the residents, they feared they might have a lawsuit on their hands. The residents worked with the developer, and they opted for Starbucks, as Tim said, and this is what we sent to the back meeting. It's still, those drive aisles are impacted by all the traffic queued up for the Starbucks. So and that's a little closer look with it turned the right way. Again, two access points for the drive-through on the restaurant for this. And at one point, some of the documents, they called it a coffee serving place. So yeah.
Yes.
So go ahead.
That whole area is titled and parked all day, all night.
That's another thing we mentioned. Yeah.
Access to the walking trails.
People don't have any place to park in the
Yeah.
parking lot, so they park there.
Divider on.
Divided road.
Yeah.
No left turns or right turns.
Yeah. So this is so we'll jump into it real quick. So we sent this lovely letter in. We discussed internally among APAC officers, hey, here's our first kind of glance at what they're proposing. There's nothing official that we're going to review right now, but we're tackling this opportunity to say, hey, these are some things we see. So we sent this letter in. You can't read it on this screen. We'll post it to the website when we have a chance. So here's our list. Traffic impacts on Green Valley, Sofia Parkway, Shadowfax Lane, Corsica, Socrates Place, and Elmore's Way, which are all south of the project. But because that road on Sofia is divided, anybody who wants to go west on Green Valley Road is going to have to go up, drive around into the neighborhood, turn around. And we're talking about RVs, boats, again. So the access on Sofia Parkway, that's what we talked about, the northbound. So what if you're a resident and you live south of there and you come in on Sofia Parkway, how do you get into it? Well, you can't, it's divided at the driveway on Sofia, and I believe, not divided, but I believe the previous project eliminated lefts in and out. So we'll have to go back to revisit that. So we don't know, that's just a concern. That's something we should talk about now before they get really deep into developing the project. And again, a large number of visitors at Folsom Lake that park along Sofia Parkway, which impacts circulation in the area. There's a lot of pedestrian activity. They do park there all day and all night. Well, not all night, but they park there for a long time. And then again, the internal vehicle and pedestrian circulations inside their project, it's very physically constrained. It's the same concerns we have at Sofia Parkway, and we cite that, a little bit of the history with, Saratoga retail, phase 2. We cite some of the history of the concerns we have with that, what was eventually developed, and those impacts are still there. So we're still concerned about that. Look at 2 screens while we do this. The noise and light impacts from the car wash specifically. There's a car wash next door. It's interior, and I know they have a wall, but I'm not sure that's really a sound wall. But if it's really a quick crack, I've gone and looked, the one in Folsom below, Green Acres, we were up looking at plants, and like, what is that noise? And you could hear it, you have the freeway right there too, and you could hear the car wash over the freeway. So obviously there's concerns about the mitigation for how we keep the residents right there from being impacted by the noise and the light. The circulation, around the car wash, how they queue up, the smog check or the car detail business, they specify that they're over on what's required for parking spaces, but what's that really going to look like when they go to build it? And again, our question is about fire emergency equipment access in that parking lot with the large trucks and and how they access physically the buildings when there's the parking spaces right up against it. The reciprocal parking lot access between the 2 project sites for the self-storage and this new project, how they screen with landscaping and the aesthetic impacts, which we talked a lot about with the self-storage project. So, and again, these applicants have been very engaged with the community and doing a lot of outreach. So we're hoping that they're consistent with that. This is a much more controversial, probably development than we saw last time. I'm sure we're going to hear from residents, and I hope we do hear from residents, because there might be some solutions that people can offer that say, if you do a wall like this, or you do, reduce the lighting, or so.
The operating hours.
The operating hours is another part of it too. So, But all those things hopefully get addressed, and, you know, we may not be totally satisfied, but if we provide the feedback, at least it will be considered, and, you know, they seem to be pretty thoughtful as they approach the community before. I'm hoping that we're consistent.
No, I think my major concern is with the drive-throughs.
Yeah.
And drive-throughs in El Dorado Hills, for the most part, have been off 50, you know, town center or off 50. This would have drive-through restaurants in what it's been typically I don't want to say, not calmer, but
Less impactful.
less impactful area. I think 2 drive-through restaurants in that area, it really will change the environment on that part of Green Valley. But also, it's really going to change the look as you go on Green Valley and on Sofia, and it will affect the neighboring communities right around.
Shadowfax.
Shadowfax,
The
up above, up on the ridge.
Yeah,
and,
Promontory and up
stuff
to it,
like
yeah.
that. So, I mean, again, it's early days.
Yeah.
We had a chance to make some initial comments, but once it actually comes up for review and approval, we hope the developers will come to APAC. We hope the neighborhoods. I mean, if neighborhoods say they ignore it or they don't seem to care, then they care only after it's approved.
Yeah.
So we need to get people concerned, if they have concerns, earlier in the process. And, you know, we can put it out on our website. We can put notice, but if people don't read those things or don't take an active interest, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, and we typically, we share when we review projects and when something's proposed, we'll share it on our website, we'll share it in our social media. And then, you know, Nextdoor is weird because as private citizens, Nextdoor used to have a very defined, you didn't reach too far with Nextdoor. Now it seems like I see posts from Folsom and Rancho Cordova. I'm in the
I get plastered.
Yeah, I get Flashville. I've always gotten Flashville. I'm in the Bass Lake area. So I would post APAC, you know, hey, here's our meeting, here's our agenda. I post it in the Bass Lake area. John Rensselaer would never see it south of the highway. I didn't reach past the middle of the golf course. So it's a little different now, but also don't control much on Nextdoor, and it's a lot of jibber jabber going on. And I appreciate the, you know, we want to hear from everybody, but we also want to be respectful, and that spins out of control quick. So we will share it widely when any project comes before us. So that's it. So the last thing we're going to talk about briefly tonight is that we always like to keep people apprised of what's coming up, what we're working on, what we have worked on, where things stand. And right now, we have a long list of projects that, you know, they're in the process of something, but nothing before us officially right now. Of course, we made our findings on the Central El Dorado Hills specific plan. We're all still waiting on where that's going to go. If there's going to be changes to the project before it goes to the Board of Supervisors, if they're going to come back with some different proposals, we don't know. Until it's official and it's in front of it, there's nothing we can review. So the costs are on the EDH 52. Again, that's sort of stagnant right now. I know they're talking about the traffic aspects for the EDH 52, but we don't have any of it. You know, they're working on the environmental documents, and they're working on how they could comply with the county's requests in terms of the transportation department. Streetside Village specific plan, that seems to be holed up. They were here with us several times, and then they started the EAR, and now we haven't heard anything back from them. Carson Creek Village, again, we had them virtually when that's a very small project. We're developing the, I'm blanking on the name of the hardware store. It's what is that there across from the entrance from? What is the name of the? No, it's like a farm. Tractor Supply. Thank you. My powers of recall tonight are greatly diminished. But they have started, I believe, on the Tractor Supply. They're getting ready to go, or they're underway. Town and Country Village El Dorado, which is a project from the Mohana family, and they've been very generous with their time. They've come and sought feedback from APAC, I think 3 or 4 times we've had them here. They're working on their environmental documents. They're working on tailoring their proposal a little more specifically, but they have an official application in. Generations of Green Valley, which is the former Dixon Ranch, which was denied in 2017. It's back in a different format, and primarily, I believe, and again, we don't have a project in front of us, and they've agreed they will come and talk to us when it's time to engage the community. And they want to be very engaged because they were shocked that their project was denied last time, and they really thought that, oh gosh, how do we drop the ball? What do we do? But the community was very vocal about that project as well. They're revisiting their project. You know, the major concern was that was an incompatible land use with 5 and 10 acre parcels in the area. And they're proposing higher density. Well, their project right now, the way it looks on paper, is that they're gonna do their own 3 to 5 acre parcels on the border of their property, provide a buffer to the existing property owners, and then they do their high density inside. So, and I might be making that way too simple. They might have something that's more nuanced. But that's the initial look that we've seen from what's submitted to the county. Marble Valley and Lime Rock Valley, again, those projects had scoping meetings and notice of preparations of EIRs in 2012. It's 10 years later and we have not seen it yet. They're big projects. And again, parts of it, Cameron Park, parts of it have to be annexed into the Dorado Hill CSD. But there are existing CSDs back there for their roads,
Yes.
Marble Valley. And the fire department has to, weigh in because, and this is more, when we talk about specific plans, this is what a specific plan looks like because it's on the fringe of existing development. So it's a plan to develop something that isn't developed yet. Central Dorado Hills, that was a concern we had. It was more of an infill and not a specific plan because it was surrounded by, it's in the middle of everything. So, and then I opine, sorry about that, we'll get off of that. We had a project a few months ago, modification and conditional approval for Summer Brook, which is a very small residential project on Green Valley Road on the north side of Green Valley across from Pleasant Grove Middle School. They had been conditioned to provide a traffic signal at Green Valley Road and Deer Valley, the western end of Deer Valley, across from Green Springs Ranch. And they're saying now that they really don't need it, that the warrants don't exist, and they want to remove that from their project. So they had some environmental concerns raised in their meeting at the Planning Commission, and then they elected to, or the comments made, and they elected before they had the hearing to continue it off calendar. So they're looking at the environmental on that. We provided some feedback on that as well.
Our issue is we don't like it when the developers agree to do something and then they get their project approved, and then 3 to 5 years later, when they're actually building it, they come back and say, well, gee, yeah, we know you said we had to do this to get the project started. Well, we're gonna get the project started, but now we don't want to do what you required us to do. We don't longer think the traffic warrants exist or it's necessary. And that just rubs me the wrong way. And you can't go and say, well, it rubs me the wrong way. It's not the way deals are
Well, no,
done.
we
We
provide,
wrote a nice letter saying why we thought it should still be enforced.
and a lot of the residents did as well.
Yeah.
Well, surprisingly, as part of the Dixon Ranch traffic analysis, because this project preceded Dixon Ranch, I want to say 2008.
Yeah.
Or 2007. And so now they're saying, well, that Dixon Ranch project says that those impacts aren't there anymore. It was not an accurate study. It does not represent what's happening now. And they also did another traffic analysis during the pandemic that also, they say, says is not representative of what would be required for a traffic signal. In fact, they said it would make it more dangerous to put a traffic signal in. And Transportation Department sort of agreed with them. Planning Department supported it, so we'll see when they come back to Planning Commission what happens there.
I will say that if you've driven by, I drove by there, up there down here yesterday. They have almost completed. They did the restriping where the middle school, it's been down to one lane and sometimes and going at stop signs, I think.
Yeah.
But the restriping is in place. All of the curbing is in place now, and it looks like in time for the middle school to open up. I think they were really rushing to try to get all that construction done.
I think the middle school opened today.
Yeah, well, they were working on it yesterday.
I haven't driven past it in a week, and I live in the Basque area, so I'm there all the time. So in fact, I use Silver Springs Parkway, come right out by that project. So with that project too, there were other elements that they had to provide that Silver Springs actually provided as well, which is the improved intersection at Deer Valley, where they have the bike lanes now, the road's a little wired, they have left turn lanes in both directions. So and I believe they did provide some financial contribution to that, but this is actually a new, Blue Mountain Communities bought the property, original developer agreed to it. So, so just an odd dynamic there. There was a pre-app for a boat storage and RV storage behind the Sofia Parkway retail that we talked about tonight on the south of the wetland that runs through there. There was also pre-app 2 years ago for a senior care, like 3 or 4 story building back there. So these are just pre-apps until there's an official application, but doesn't seem like anything has happened that we've been advised of. The Villages of Town Center West, which is converting right by Blue Shield over there by the Oakmont Senior Care, and converting it to mixed use where they're talking about doing rentals apartments. Originally it was senior apartments, and then some medical facilities for, it's important for the senior community to have those nearby. That could be a benefit for the community that we don't have the medical offices but I believe the feedback from the Board of Supervisors was that I think they're a bit weary, some of the supervisors, of more senior housing in terms of, it was, a lot of gated communities. This is rentals, which, our senior community probably needs. It's something to consider, right? We should evaluate it. So that was feedback I got. I think they switched that around, but the project's been sold to a different ownership group now. So we don't know where that's at. And then La Canada, I can't remember, is it 41 or 47 units? It's like approved in 2007 or 12. I'm trying to remember. But they have a new tentative map coming in with it's 2022, it's TM22. So something's changed there, but there are no project documents in track it to tell us what it is. It's north of Malcolm Dixon and approaching towards where Salmon Falls comes across the top. It's above the current, the vineyards where it's being developed right now along Malcolm Dixon. The Alto project's over there too. So, but they're on the website if anybody's dying to read about them. But again, it's all old information from the county. Most of those links are depreciated. They don't work anymore. You can't find the ones we could find. We downloaded and put on our website, but county links seem to be all broken. So that's it for project here. I did have one question, and I know Supervisor Heil is still with us, and I haven't got an answer from the Transportation Department. We had talked back, I want to say in April, about a project for Silva Valley, where the southbound lanes at the interchange were going to be closed for about 4 weeks, so they get this EID project in, water and sewer. And so we had, made that known to the community to be advised something's coming, and we're going to get started in June, so they'd have it wrapped up before school started. Did anything happen with that? Because I haven't gotten anything back from the Transportation Department.
My understanding was all that work got completed in that period when the road was all torn up. So it happened earlier than I thought it was going to, because
Okay.
I've not heard anything that says it's stretching it out, but they haven't told me specifically it's done.
Yeah,
So,
well, that was
yeah.
the thing, is that it sounded like the lane closures were going to be more impactful and more long-lasting, and it didn't seem to happen that way. So we were just curious, and we hadn't gotten any feedback on that.
It's, they're still doing some work, but not
Yeah.
every day on it. Sometimes
Yeah.
you still see go down to one lane
Yes.
as you head.
Yeah, but school started up again, and it was supposed to be done right after school let out. So they got to wait another year if that's what happened, if it got delayed that long.
Okay.
No,
And I
no,
don't
it's-
think that's what,
It's
Go
been
ahead.
done, John. I bet, I drive that regularly, and.
that's what I thought. It got done with a lot less impact than what was forecast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
'cause
it
I think
probably
the-
overemphasized the road closures and stuff, and they got it done without a huge impact. It's my understanding it's complete, but I didn't ask the
The
specific
biggest
question.
complaint was that when they finished, people didn't realize it wasn't finished, and they said the road is really, really rough. And then 2 weeks later, they did the final improvements they needed to do, and then they came and repaved it, and that was the only issue. Some people complained about, it's down to one lane and it's causing us traffic, but that didn't last very long, and they did great traffic management and getting people through both directions.
So under promise, over deliver. I like that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that seems to be that way that worked, but all I've heard is compliments on the road surface compared to what it was
Yeah.
when they did the temporary patch. I mean, it's a much nicer road now, so I think they're done.
Silva Valley Parkway, basically from the elementary school, well, the whole length of Silva Valley,
From
but
Serrano.
from Serrano Parkway down south. The original suggestion was that southbound was going to be, lanes would be closed through the periods of time or fully for 4 weeks while they put in a lot of underground work for water sewer to complete for, I think it's A14 to
Yeah.
Serrano to facilitate that last project. But So I was waiting the whole time and I saw construction activity, but it wasn't what they had discussed. I thought, was this gonna be next year now, or is, school starting? But I didn't get any feedback from the transportation department, so. And speaking of the transportation department, Rafael Martinez, the director of transportation, was scheduled to be here next month to talk about the TOT provision that will be on the ballot for us to vote on, and how it would impact road maintenance here in the west slope. There are two different measures. But he has a conflicting schedule at our next September meeting. He will be here in October to talk about it in time for us to vote on it. So a little heads up on that. And with that, I wanted to remind, if there were any questions on those projects. We need help reviewing it, so if you have an interest in any of these, or even if you don't have an interest in them, if you could help, we would appreciate the help. You become a voting member of APAC, where we vote on our findings to submit to the county and the developers. Is you volunteer to work on a project review or a subcommittee, and then we help you, hey, this is how we do it. Gosh, it'd be nice if you could come in and tell us, why aren't you doing it this way? And then we'll do it that way too. But you work on a project and then you become a voting member of APAC. And in fact, we have a couple new members. They are not here tonight, but they worked on the central project. So we welcome them and we'll formally greet them next month. So if you can volunteer, we would love your help. If you don't want to be a voting member, we still love your help. We promise we'll let you get on to your life after you're done. Maybe. So we have an opportunity now. We wanted to make public comments available for the people who don't attend the meeting or can't be at the meeting. If you have a comment for our next agenda, or on things on the agenda and on the agenda, you can email those comments into edhapac.comment@gmail.com by 5 p.m. the Monday before our Wednesday meeting, and we'll get your questions in. If we can get them in time and we have a guest or a project applicant that can answer the question, we want to get it to them as soon as possible so that they can, instead of them saying, hey, I'll go find out and I'll get back to you, that they have the question and then they can maybe come with the answer, which you might not like, but they can provide an answer. And maybe it's something that will provoke more analysis and study for them. Our next meeting is in September. It's Wednesday the 14th. We'll be virtual and hybrid here in this building and on Zoom as we're doing now. With that, I think we're going to wrap it up tonight, unless there's anything we need to go back to. There's a lot of me. Sorry, gang. Okay, so I don't see any hands up. I appreciate everybody taking time to attend with us tonight. It's 8 o'clock. John Rasler would be happy. Yeah. So I thank everyone. Thank you, John, for your long commute tonight. And we look forward to seeing everybody next month. With that, we'll end our meeting.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, thanks.